Welcome to Diabetes Day by Day, the American Diabetes Association's official podcast. It is summertime. The days are long, the weather's warm, and many kids are spending time at summer camps. Every summer, thousands of children living with diabetes attend diabetes-specific summer camps where they can learn more about how to manage their diabetes, build confidence, and have fun together. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the best part of summer for many children living with diabetes, and that is diabetes camps. I'm Dr. Neil Skolnik, professor of family and community medicine at the Sidney Kimmel Medical College of Thomas Jefferson University, and joining me as always is my co-host.
I'm Dr. Sarah Wettergreen, an assistant professor at the University of Colorado Skaggs School of Pharmacy and an ambulatory care clinical pharmacist.
And to share information about diabetes summer camps, we have someone who is truly an expert on this topic, Becky Barnett. Becky has served as the director of summer camps for the American Diabetes Association for over 20 years. And as she just told us, she has over 20 years of t-shirts, one for each summer she has been there, and they are each amazing and bring back amazing memories. She has experience attending diabetes summer camps herself. Becky, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here, and I'm actually prepping for another summer camp that we're going to be having in Utah in a few short days. And it's nice to take a little bit of a break and get to talk about something I love, which is diabetes camp. So thank you to you both for having me on today.
It's great, Becky, and we're looking forward to talking to you. To get started, can you just give an overview for our listeners about what a diabetes summer camp is and what are some of the experiences that kids who attend these camps usually have?
Yeah, so when you think about summer camp, I mean, there's all these images that kind of are conjured up in your head. You think about swimming and arts and crafts and going on nature hikes and maybe horseback riding, rock climbing. Diabetes camp is all of that, except we've got a few extra bonuses with that. Some of the things that we have at diabetes camp that they wouldn't have at quote unquote normal camp would be we do have a medical staff that's on site 24/7 to make sure that people are getting appropriate diabetes care. We usually have a dietitian on site just to make sure carbs are counted, that anyone with any kind of food allergies is getting those needs met. And then I think the best part about camp is that all the kids at diabetes camp have diabetes. So it's a chance to get to know other people living with diabetes, learning about their struggles, how they deal with things, what they do when they're low in math class, or what's it like to have a job and have diabetes. Something that you can't always necessarily ask like an older sibling or a parent, and sometimes even your diabetes care provider, because if they don't live with it themselves, they haven't gone through it. So I think definitely that's one of the best things. And a lot of our camps, we do have counselors that have diabetes themselves in many of our camps that the ADA offers. And so most of them have been through the trials and tribulations of life and serve as great role models of how to live successfully with diabetes.
It seems like such a unique opportunity to connect with others who are just like you. And I feel like for many children, especially who are living with diabetes in your class or in your school, there may be someone similar to you or there may not be. And so to have that network come together in such a unique experience seems it's like such a transformative experience. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got started in working with these summer camps?
Yeah, so as Neil had said, I have, over 20 camp t-shirts. I actually have more than that because my whole tenure with diabetes camps started when I was 11 years old. I had been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, had a very hard adjustment period. Actually 9 months had gone by and I was not a happy kid. I was not the kid my parents knew. My teachers at school said I was very different because I took having diabetes really hard. I remember I couldn't even say that D word. I just wanted nothing to do with it. So my parents, of course, were worried out of their minds, didn't know what to do. And they went to our family pediatrician and they said, you know, what can we do for her? She's really struggling. And he said, I have two words for you. And they're like, okay. And he said, Camp Needlepoint. And my dad gave him the strangest look and thought, what on this, you know, planet is Camp Needlepoint? Why would sewing camp help our kid? And he's actually, no, it's not sewing camp. It's a camp for kids with diabetes that was located in Wisconsin. I grew up and I currently am in Minnesota still. But so I went to Camp Needlepoint for the very first time after having diabetes for 9 months. This does date me a little bit. I was still on injections at the time, but I refused to do injections. I would not take the syringe. I would not drop my insulin. I was having no part of diabetes. Also, my blood glucose meter, I apologize to it now, was thrown several times across the room. Obviously things have changed with technology and kids and adults with diabetes have insulin pumps and continuous blood glucose monitors. But back at that time, that wasn't the common occurrence. So I went begrudgingly that first year, that first summer, and it was a 45-minute drive to camp. And like all good parents, my parents didn't tell me they were taking me to camp. They had told me we were just gonna get a new duffel bag for school, which I,
Oy,
of
oy,
course, was very I'm like, "Hey, I was oldest of 4 kids, and if I could get something out of a deal." And then as we were driving to the camp, I had my new duffel bag, and my mom was shoving clothes into it from a garbage bag,
oy.
and I'm like, "What's going on?" And they said,
The
"Oh, you're."
alarms went off.
Yeah. I'm like, and I was like trapped like a rat, right? I was like in the minivan. I'm like, let me out. And I said, where are we going? And they're like, by the way, you're going to diabetes camp. And I'm like, that is the last thing that I wanted as a kid. So I got there. I refused to leave the minivan. I actually took my seatbelt, ran it through my shorts, around my brother's car seat, and plugged it in and said, you have to cut me out of this vehicle to get me to go to camp. They didn't have to cut me out. There was some bribing and I did stay and I cried. I cried the entire week. And
Hmm.
the very last day, my parents came to pick me up and they said, well, what did you think? And I said, I'm never coming back. I hated it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I learned how to do my first shot. And yeah, I learned not to throw my meter across the room. And they're like, so you don't want to go next year? And I said, well, if I have to, I guess you could sign me up. And I've been back at camp every summer for 35 years now, minus the birth of my daughter, and because I had to take time off for that, and the 2 years that we didn't have camp because of COVID. But it
Wow.
is very near and dear.
You know, it brings back so many memories when you talk about how challenging it was to go to camp because whether you are going to diabetes camp or whether you're going to a summer camp of any type, your first time, I will never forget leaving my parents and crying when
Mhm.
they sent me to summer camp. And I don't know if you remember that song by an old comic singer, Alan Sherman, Hello, Mother, Hello, Father, Here I Am at Camp Granada. And he starts off crying and yelling and screaming and how terrible it is. And as is true of so many of us who go to camp, by the end of camp, wow, you realize what an incredible transformative experience it is.
Exactly. Becky, it sounds like someone who was young Becky, afraid of needles, ended up at Camp Needlepoint. That couldn't have made that transition any easier, but it definitely sounds like you had so many lessons learned in that time and you really personally experienced the benefits of camp, even if you had to go in with some resistance to start. So, overall, based on your own experience and the experiences that you see with campers now, how would you describe the benefits of those who are attending diabetes summer camps?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think I know personally for me, one of the things that I learned, peer pressure comes in a very good form at camp. I had never, as I'd mentioned before, had never done my own shot, hadn't even drawn it up. And I remember the counselors coming over, and I was 11 years old. So I was on that preteen, I'm kind of cool, don't want to look dumb in front of my friends. And the one counselor said, because they knew because of my, file, that, oh, Becky, you need some help with your shots. And I'm like, what? No, I don't need help with my shots. And I drew it up and I just did it in my leg without even a second
Wow.
thought to it because I looked around and all the other girls in my cabin were doing shots. And I thought, well, I can't be the only one. And so I remember still at the end of that week, they make a big deal when you've done first at camps, a first shot, a different site, and now it's more like a different pump site or trying your CGM in a new place. And I still get teary eyed when I think about that because I know how much courage and I know how much bravery it takes to get to that point and how much freedom that gives these kids when they learn something new at camp because I mean, before that point, I was never able to sleep over at anyone's house because my mom would have to come over and give me my shots for
Hmm.
if I was staying overnight. And, they it was something that I had not gotten to experience. And so the last thing I ever thought I would get from camp is that sense of freedom. And I think that's what a lot of kids get. They also learn that they can do it on their own. And sometimes mom and dad or their parents they live or their guardians they live with um are more than, you know, willing to help, but sometimes you just need to do it on your own. And I think that's the great place. At camp is a safe spot where you get to learn how to do these different skills, see how people do things differently. And we try to guide them in the most appropriate ways, of course. And that's why we have counselors and medical staff there that know about diabetes. But I think the one thing is that you it's a magical place. It's odd to hear, but it really is
I
because I oh, go ahead, Neil. I
No,
was gonna
no, I
say
believe it. It's so funny when I'm listening to you talk. I'm just thinking of a very different camp, but my experience as a kid where you could go and be a different self than you were the rest of the year. In some ways, you had different groups of kids with, and your point about peer pressure is so important that you want the right peers, and diabetes camp has those right peers, kids who are there also not without their other clique around, so you form your own clique, and whatever it is that your goal is you can go after. I just remember, again, different circumstance, but growing so much because I had the room to try out a different personality, not shy Neil, but Neil who could talk and be fun and do kind of really stupid things in a safe environment, and the opportunity to, as as a young person with diabetes, to see how other healthy people are managing it. And I'm sure some practical hints you learn, like how do you manage your insulin and carb intake after playing basketball or going on a hike in the woods, which are complicated things.
oh, true. And I think another thing too is at some of the camps I have, they have rock climbing or a ropes course. What do you do with your insulin pump when you need to wear a harness? And those are things like I said before, you just can't usually ask other people without diabetes because they don't know what it's like. So true, it's so many life skills and as we get older, guess what? We still have diabetes and how do you maneuver the world after high school? What do you do in college? What do you do if you go into the work world? And I could say that two of my very best friends I met my first year at camp, we're still friends today. We have our own families, are doing our own things, and live many miles apart. But when we get together, it's like no time has passed. And so it's nice to have those kind of people in your back corner. If there's been times where it's like, hey, I'm traveling, I forgot this supply. can you help me out? And there's having that network is always great. And just someone that gets it because, eventually I feel like I've managed diabetes successfully for the last, 30 plus years, but everyone hits a wall and you need sometimes someone to just bounce ideas off or someone to say, yeah, that just really does plain suck. And you know what? I get it. So it's friendships and skills that will take you through the rest of your life for sure.
It it sounds so inspiring that I wish I could go to one of these camps and make some of these connections, but I know I am probably not the ideal candidate. For those who are listening and might be feeling the same way, who are good candidates to go to a diabetes camp?
I am a firm believer is you should try everything at least once. And Sarah, not too late for you. We're always looking for volunteers. I'll
There
put
you
that
go.
there. And you still get to get, the benefits of camp. But, for the American Diabetes Association, most of our camps are for kids ages 5 through 17. We don't necessarily specify if you have to have type 1 or type 2. Predominantly, the kids do have type 1 diabetes, but we will take kids that have type 2 diabetes because we know that even though you may manage it different, that in the long run, the complications can be the same. So we understand they're two very different styles of managing it, but there are a lot of similarities as well. I would also say, that we do have 33 different camps throughout the United States that are put on by the ADA. But, some people might not live by a camp or have one nearby. Maybe they're not quite ready. Maybe mom and dad aren't quite ready. We also do something called Imagine Camp, which is a virtual camp that we offer.
Hmm.
To find information about any of our camp programs, you can go to diabetes.org/camp, and that will tell you about Imagine Camp, the virtual program. It'll tell you about our overnight camp programs, our day camp programs. And we also do a family retreats where everyone gets to come for a weekend. And
Huh.
like I said, those are kind of throughout the United States. So to find where we offer those, diabetes.org/camp.
Tell us for a minute or two about the family retreats because that's intriguing. Because diabetes doesn't just affect the individual, it affects the family. And I have to imagine it must be fantastic for families, for parents, siblings of kids who have diabetes to be able to talk with one another about what they're going through and their strategies. Tell us a little more.
Yeah, I would love to. I actually had done just a family retreat. We did it back in November. It was out in Washington State on Bastion Island. It was beautiful. It's called Camp South Family Retreat. So we had families that came in. We had different dynamics. I mean, you had your basic, mom, dad, and the kids. We had one family that came in. It was a single parent with their partner and their child. We had, some grandparents that came in with the family. I think we would say our age range is like 3 to 93, if you want to put it there. So basically, anyone that's in your family unit is invited to come. And what we did is we spent time just doing normal camp activities, and everyone got to do them. We had some more downtime in there for some people that wanted to, relax a little bit. But families could go to the ropes course or arts and crafts together, or just even spend time in their cabin, just hang out as a family. And then we did have separate sessions where we would have the parents or the guardians or whatever adult came with, went and did some different sessions where we just talked about self-care and how do you take care of yourself, because taking care of a child with diabetes is a lot of work. We also had a separate session for the kids with diabetes, and then another session for the siblings or the other, children in the family that came with. And what's it like to have someone that has diabetes? And yeah, sometimes they do get a little bit more attention. And I think one of the greatest things though was seeing everyone come together, and we did one night of a game of charades. And just to see some of the parents come out of their shells. We were doing animals only, and one of them was a starfish, and I just remember that this mom just got out on the ground and was acting like a starfish. It was hilarious, and I think it let kids see their parents in a different light too. We do have medical staff at these programs as well, not only to do, see the overall kind of management. Most of that still is on the diabetes management, is on the family. But, just in case there would be some sort of emergency. But I think the other thing was that, just to, pick their brains on, how do we deal with these situations with our kids growing up? Or how do I ask my mom or dad this? And we also had a session for the kids saying, what would you like to tell your parents that you feel like you can't tell them? A lot of interesting things came out. And actually, one little boy had written, I just want to tell my parents thank you. And so,
Oh.
which was, it was very, brings tears to the eye because he was so grateful. He goes, I know it's a lot. And he actually had the idea of making cards for everyone. So they all made cards for their parents or their caretakers and just thanking them for everything they deal with, the high blood sugars, the lows, and having fruit snacks smushed in their purses, and, you know, dealing with where the, where can we get our, juice boxes, things like that. So definitely was a shorter time frame. Usually they're 2 to 3 days, but I think just as impactful.
It sounds so important and such a nice opportunity. So often we go through life rushing day to day, taking care of everything we have to without taking the time that's so important to reflect on our lives, to reflect on how you said,
Mhm.
how we care for one another, or the things that we're afraid of when we care for one another. And I'd really encourage our listeners who would find it helpful to go to the website and look up, because reflection is incredibly important. It's how we grow. Can I ask you? I want to shift gears a little bit because we
Yeah.
don't have that much time remaining. And it sounds like there are enormous opportunities for our listeners with diabetes at diabetes camps, for they and their families at the diabetes retreat. That said, many people with diabetes choose to go to summer camps that are not centered around diabetes for a variety of reasons. And I know this could be a whole other episode, but the short version, can you give those individuals some suggestions of things that they should pay attention to when either selecting a camp or sending their child to summer camp that is not fully oriented around diabetes?
Oh, sure. And that's the one thing. We love it when our kids come to our ADA camps, our diabetes camps, but we want to empower them too to be able to go to basketball camp or, whatever, specialty or area they want, or just a traditional summer camp. And I think some of the things that we just advocate for is that make sure that for the parents or the guardians that they're asking lots of questions of the camp director, the program director, who do they have on site as medical staff? Almost, all camps has to have someone that is earmarked as their camp medic or, a health aide, someone, just to know, identify who is there to help if your camper would have a low blood sugar episode, hypoglycemic episode, who could help administer emergency medications and that, who can be trained. A lot of camps, there's a lot of us with diabetes out there, and a lot of camps have had some experience, um, and some good, some bad. And, I think, to find out what kind of experience they've had in the past. And I think it depends on your child too, like where they are in their diagnosis and, what age they are. But I think that, anything's a possibility. We would definitely empower people, like I said, to try out different camps. Also, another thing would be to talk to their food service manager, just like, are carb counts available? Can they meet? Does your child maybe have celiac sprue? Can they meet their, dietary needs? Um, and, maybe, most camps have menus now. They either have a food service that comes in, the menus are planned out in weeks in advance. So you can get an idea of what's going to be served, like what a typical meal looks like. And then I would say too, if you'd like, we have a great resource on diabetes.org/summer camp. We have 15 different modules for diabetes at camp. And while they are kind of geared towards those that are working at diabetes camps, this can also be a great learning tool for those that want to learn a little bit more. There's, like I said, 15 modules, kind of go as you want through them. Has everything from diabetes 101 to how do you use technology at camp? Granted, I'm guessing a lot of camps that don't specialize in diabetes probably wouldn't look at all 15 modules, but definitely is something where families can, suggest that. It's a free resource that their camp medical personnel can go and look at if they want to know some more. And like I said, though, I would ask a lot of questions and just be prepared to let your kid know that also that they can do this and that they can have a successful time, and it's teaching them independence again too. So like I said, and you know what, there's 7 of us that are camp directors here at the ADA. We're always willing to jump on a phone call or get in contact with people if they would like a little bit more information or to help navigate that situation.
So that sounds great, Becky, and thanks so much for that overview. I think it's often helpful too when your child has a particular need to reach out, let the camp know whatever type of camp it is, and perhaps even if there are specific issues, a child who's currently struggling with too many hypoglycemic episodes, let that camp doctor know. The camp doctor is not usually an endocrinologist, is most often a generalist, someone who's there to both provide care and contribute. And I can tell you from the doctor's point of view, it's helpful to have a heads up ahead of time, and it's always appreciated. We're about out of time. Becky, any final thoughts for our listeners?
I would just say if you're on the fence about going to camp, whether it's a regular camp or a diabetes camp, I would say take that jump and give it a try, because I am a firm believer in that a week can change your entire life. And I know it did for me, and I know it has for thousands of kids living with diabetes. So I would definitely be a huge advocate for it. And always, I am more than happy if anyone would like to discuss in further about our camps. And like I said, that diabetes .org/camp is how you can get in contact with any of our wonderful camp directors or camp staff. So, but um, with besides that, happy trails and have a good time at camp.
Becky, I have a question. Do you have a
Yeah.
t-shirt that says on it, "A week can change your entire life," or am I going to have to order a t-shirt myself?
Nope, I do have one. Our staff shirt from one of our camps. I believe it is 2017. I can get you one, and Sarah, you as well. It
Sign
says
me
it.
up.
I love that statement. I think, wow, that is profound. Sarah, any final thoughts you have?
I'm just sitting here in awe of the experiences that you've described, Becky, the experiences these families and individuals are having. And I kind of feel like I missed the boat on camps. So I'm going to just echo your message, Becky, of don't let the fear of the unknown stop you from trying that. And if you're a little nervous, especially with how you're going to manage your diabetes while at camp, maybe start with the diabetes camp and have that support
Mhm.
system where you feel more comfortable and have that connection to get started in your camp experience. So I just think there's so many opportunities ahead.
Thanks so much, Sarah. For our listeners, I think this has been a pretty amazing episode. And I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that when after listening to this, share it with one or two people that you know that have young people with diabetes. So they're aware of this. It might be a little late in the summer now to sign up. I don't know. But if you don't get around to it this summer, your plans are already there. plan on it for next summer. I think, Becky, this was one of the most inspiring episodes we have had, and I think there is so much value in taking that time away from our usual rushed lives and spending time with other people who understand you and who are there to help you grow. To our audience, as always, thanks for joining us. Tune in next month when we'll have a special edition focusing on nutrition. Obviously, something which is critical for all of us. And don't hesitate to leave us a message with your thoughts on our podcast phone. We have a dedicated line, 703-755-7288. Ask us questions or comment on our current episode. Remember, a week can change your entire life. Also, we may read and discuss the questions and comments that you leave on our podcast line, and don't hesitate to leave any suggestions for future episodes. Let us know. That number again is 703-755-7288. Becky, Sarah, thank you so much. For the American Diabetes Association, I'm Dr. Neil Skolnik, and thanks for joining us.